What happens when unchecked power meets quiet strength? Watch how one woman's silent resolve turns a routine stop into a turning point. Comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss a story that matters. It was just past 11 p.m. on a quiet Wednesday night in Ohio. The streets were almost empty, just a few shift workers heading home. Headlights flickering down nearly silent roads. Captain Naomi Sinclair was on her way back from a military planning session. 2 hours south of her home base. She was driving a black, government-issued SUV. No frills, no flash, just like her. Everything about her presence was steady, disciplined, and calm. She had driven this road countless times before. Her posture was relaxed, hands at 10 and 2. Her thoughts already drifting toward home. The SUV glided smoothly between the lane markers. No speeding, no swerving, no cause for concern. But parked just off Reynolds Road, Sergeant Kyle Maddox sat slouched in his cruiser, sipping what was left of a lukewarm coffee and scrolling through his phone. The night had been uneventful. No real calls, no action, and now, movement. A vehicle he didn't recognize, rolling past in the dark. Without hesitation, he tossed the coffee cup into the passenger seat and flipped on his lights. Naomi didn't panic. She simply exhaled, blinked once, and eased her SUV to the shoulder. Calm, controlled, exactly how she'd been trained. The slam of the patrol car door cut through the stillness. She glanced at the side mirror. A tall man approached her driver's side window, hand resting near his holstered weapon, flashlight already raised. He didn't greet her, didn't even glance at the passenger side. He went straight to her window. License and registration, he barked, eyes cold and unreadable. Naomi rolled her window halfway down and kept both hands visible. Officer, may I ask why I'm being stopped? Maddox narrowed his eyes, the beam of his flashlight aimed directly into hers. You were drifting between lanes. Didn't use your signal. Looked like you might have been impaired. She raised one brow, not aggressive, just surprised. I wasn't. License and registration, he repeated, louder this time, still composed. Naomi slowly reached for the glove compartment and retrieved the requested documents. As she handed them over, she said, "This is a government vehicle. I'm a federal officer." Maddox glanced at the ID without much reaction. You military? Yes. He gave a short, dismissive smirk. Doesn't mean you're above the law. I never said I was. His tone shifted, just enough to notice. Step out of the vehicle for me. Excuse me? Step out of the car. I'm conducting a sobriety check. Naomi's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. On what grounds? I've complied. I haven't been drinking. I'd like to understand why I'm being asked to exit the vehicle. You refusing a lawful order now? No, she said. I'm asking for clarification. That clearly struck a nerve. Without another word, Maddox opened her door himself. I need you to step out of the vehicle. Now. That was the moment Naomi pressed record on her phone camera. Quietly, calmly, just so we're clear, she said evenly. This interaction is being documented. For the first time, Maddox blinked at the phone. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face, but he didn't back down. Out of the car, she stepped out, composed and upright, not defiant, just firm. Even in plain clothes, everything about her screamed discipline. Maddox looked her over, finally seeing her, not just as a driver but as something else. Someone else, someone who might be a problem. Still, he pressed on. He ordered her to walk a straight line under the streetlights. Naomi complied without a word. No wobble, no slurring. She passed every part of the field sobriety test without fault. Still, Maddox issued a citation for failure to maintain lane. Naomi accepted the ticket without argument. No eye roll, no snide remark, just a look, one that lingered as she stepped back into her SUV and drove off into the night. To Maddox, that was the end of it. But he had no idea what he had just set in motion. Sergeant Kyle Maddox didn't lose sleep over the stop. Not that night, not the next morning either. He logged the citation like he always did, failure to maintain lane. Possible signs of impairment, no arrest made, and dropped the body cam into its charger on the evidence rack. He didn't even bother reviewing it. In his world, it was a routine night. Another citation. Another driver with an attitude. Back at the precinct, he half joked about it in the break room. Some Fed thought flashing her badge would make me back off. He said to Officer Lex Donnelly. Military or whatever. Tried to pull rank. Donnelly looked up from his sandwich. She was military? Yeah. Government ID. Suit and tie type. What was the name? Maddox shrugged, mouth half full. Sinclair. Naomi Sinclair. Donnelly's brow furrowed. Captain Sinclair? That made Maddox pause. How the hell do you know that? She lectured at our academy last year. Donnelly said slowly. She's not just some Fed. She's command staff out of Fort Wayne. Logistics division. Served 2 combat tours. Bronze Star. She's a real one. Maddox leaned back, annoyed. Okay, so? Donnelly didn't push, but the silence that followed said plenty. Still, Maddox shook it off. Doesn't matter. On the road, I'm the authority. Doesn't matter what she's got pinned to her chest. But that silence, that subtle, unintended warning, stuck with him longer than he wanted to admit. What Maddox didn't know, and wouldn't for another 48 hours, was that Naomi had already filed a formal complaint. Not with just internal affairs, but with the Office of the Inspector General. Her phone footage had been forwarded to her legal team. Her body language hadn't changed that night, but her mission had. This wasn't about bruised ego. It was about accountability. Back on base in Fort Wayne, Naomi sat in her office the next morning. The soft hum of a ceiling fan spinning overhead. She hadn't slept well, not because of fear, but because of focus. The interaction kept replaying in her mind. Not just what Maddox said, but how he said it. The tone, the posture, the threat. Her aide, Sergeant Brielle Daniels, knocked lightly before stepping in. Captain, you good? Naomi looked up, composed as ever. Not really, but I'm working on it. Daniels nodded. I saw the footage. Do you want me to loop in the legal counsel? Already did, Naomi said, sliding a folder across her desk. You're going official then? I'm not after headlines. I'm after clarity and accountability. Daniels hesitated. You know this could go public. I know, Naomi said quietly. Let it. She didn't post the video online. She didn't give interviews. She followed every regulation by the book. One by one, she checked off each box, filing the complaint, attaching the video, and sending the documents where they needed to go. And behind the scenes, those documents were doing their job. The footage made its way through military legal channels, catching attention faster than Naomi expected. It didn't make national news, but it made noise where it counted. Commanders, legal teams, inspector general staffers, and, soon, local officials. The following week, Maddox was pulled into his captain's office, Captain Avery Rhodes, a sharp-eyed veteran who rarely looked surprised. But today, his expression was grim. Close the door, Rhodes said. Maddox sat down, arms folded. This about that citation? Rhodes stared at him. You know who Naomi Sinclair is? Maddox shrugged. She said she was military. She's not just military. She's a decorated officer. And she filed a formal complaint. Maddox leaned back. So, I followed protocol. Rhodes didn't flinch. That's not what the video shows. What video? She recorded you, start to finish. Maddox scoffed. People record us all the time. Bodycam caught it too. We've reviewed both angles. Silence. Rhodes continued, voice flat. You escalated without cause. She was compliant, identified herself. You insisted on a field sobriety test with no visible signs of impairment. I was doing my job. Maddox snapped. You were pushing your authority. And now we're in it. Maddox exhaled sharply, arms uncrossing. So what? She files a complaint and suddenly I'm on trial. There's more, Rhodes said, sliding a manila folder across the desk. You're being named in a civil rights complaint. Lucas County Court, notice to appear. You're being sued. Maddox didn't speak at first. He stared at the paper. A chill crept over him as he read the plaintiff's name, Captain Naomi Sinclair. Charges: unlawful detainment, intimidation, abuse of authority. This won't hold up, Maddox muttered. It's a traffic stop. Rhodes nodded slowly. A traffic stop that's now a case study in overreach. In the locker room that afternoon, the atmosphere had changed. Maddox could feel it. Conversations stopped when he walked in. Younger officers gave him the same respect, but their eyes were different. Like something invisible had shifted. He wasn't the untouchable veteran anymore. Meanwhile, Naomi kept her posture steady, kept her schedule full. She didn't talk about the case. She didn't use it to rally anyone. But quietly, she met with her legal counsel, Alyssa Tran, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who believed in clean cases built on facts. "This isn't just about you being treated unfairly," Alyssa said, flipping through her binder. "This stop could be seen as a violation of federal procedure. He had no probable cause. That SUV is government property. You're a federal officer. It changes the entire context." Naomi didn't blink. "Then we take it to court." "You sure?" Alyssa asked. "Public court's not quiet. It could follow you." Naomi nodded. "Good. Let it." She wasn't chasing a payout. She was building a precedent. A moment that could be cited, referenced. A case that could say, power doesn't excuse behavior, and rank doesn't erase dignity. The story began spreading among Naomi's peers, not as gossip, but as warning. Quiet conversations in barracks, mentions in leadership briefings. Soldiers, especially women of color, watched with a mix of pride and anticipation. They weren't surprised by what had happened, but they were watching closely to see what would come of it. 3 weeks later, the courtroom filled early, not with press, not yet, but with people who knew what was really at stake. Officers from the precinct, soldiers from Fort Wayne, law students, local community members. Everyone sat shoulder to shoulder, waiting. Naomi stepped into the courtroom not in a suit, but in full military dress. Medals aligned, rank displayed, badges catching the soft courtroom light. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there to be seen. Maddox was already seated at the defense table. He looked up and saw her, and for the first time, the smirk he usually wore didn't quite hold. The judge entered. "Captain Sinclair," he said, glancing over the file. "Thank you for your service. You may proceed." Naomi walked to the stand, each step measured, and when she spoke, it was with the same strength she had used her entire career, not loud, not angry, just clear. The courtroom air was tight, like the tension had weight. Captain Naomi Sinclair sat tall in the witness stand, the decorations on her uniform gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The jury took her in, not just her words, but the precision of her bearing. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Alyssa Tran stood before her, steady and clear. "Captain Sinclair, for the record, can you describe the events of the night in question?" Naomi didn't waver. "I was returning from a logistics meeting at the Indiana Guard Reserve. Around 11:15 p.m., I was pulled over by Officer Maddox. There was no erratic driving. I wasn't impaired. I had not violated any traffic law." "Did you ask him why you were being stopped?" "Yes. He claimed I had been drifting between lanes. I asked for clarification, politely. He escalated immediately." "And when did you begin recording?" "When he demanded I step out of the vehicle without explanation. That's when I turned on my phone." Alyssa nodded, eyes on the jury. "Was there any resistance on your part?" "None. I complied with every instruction. I was calm. I was clear. I identified myself as a federal officer operating a government vehicle." The jury scribbled notes. The judge remained impassive, but Naomi could see the shift already happening. People were paying attention. "Do you believe he would have handled the stop differently had he known your status?" "Yes," Naomi said without hesitation. "Why?" "Because that uniform changes the way people see you. And that's the problem." Then Alyssa stepped back. No further questions. The judge turned to the defense. "Counselor Brenner, your witness." Charles Brenner approached with the kind of smoothness that says I've done this 1,000 times. His voice lowered, respectful, but Naomi had heard that tone before. The tone that masks condescension with civility. "Captain Sinclair, with respect, is it possible Officer Maddox was simply exercising caution? Routine field sobriety check?" Naomi didn't blink. "He never cited any behavior consistent with impairment. I was steady, alert, and within my lane. The footage confirms that. But he did administer the test." "And you complied?" "Yes." "And passed?" "Yes." "Then why pursue legal action if nothing further occurred?" Naomi leaned forward slightly. "Because the abuse of power doesn't need to end in violence to still be wrong." Brenner frowned. "You're implying intent. I'm stating impact. Naomi said coolly. His actions weren't just disrespectful, they were unlawful. And if I hadn't had my phone rolling, this would have been buried like it always is. The room stayed still. Brenner opened his mouth but found no easy retort. No further questions. The judge looked up. You may step down, Captain. Naomi returned to her seat beside Alyssa. The courtroom buzzing now with low murmurs. Then it was Officer Maddox's turn. He stood and walked slowly to the witness stand. His uniform replaced by a navy blue suit that couldn't hide the edge in his shoulders. He looked less sure than usual. Like the ground beneath his feet wasn't solid anymore. Alyssa stood to question him. Officer Maddox, she began. How long have you served in law enforcement? 15 years. Would you consider yourself experienced? Yes. So let's talk about that experience. On the night you stopped Captain Sinclair, did you see any indication of erratic driving? She drifted once. Didn't signal. Once? He hesitated. That's what I saw. And that justified immediate field sobriety testing? Maddox shifted in the chair. I had reason to be cautious. Cautious, Alyssa echoed. Yet she was driving a government vehicle. She identified herself as a federal officer. No alcohol was detected, no impairment. So I ask again, what was the real reason for the escalation? Maddox looked toward his lawyer. Then back at the jury. She didn't answer fast enough. She questioned me. That raised red flags. Alyssa raised her brow. Questioning an officer is not illegal. Is it? No. Then would you say it's possible your reaction was personal? Maddox's jaw tightened. No. Let's look at the footage again. The courtroom dimmed slightly as both videos were played. First Naomi's phone footage, steady, deliberate. Then Maddox's body cam, showing his aggressive posture, clipped tone, hand on holster. Everyone in the room could feel it now. It wasn't just protocol, it was power being flexed where it didn't belong. The videos ended. Alyssa asked, if you had known who Captain Sinclair was that night, her record, her rank, would you have acted the same? There was a long pause. Maddox looked down. Probably not. The answer echoed across the courtroom like a dropped hammer. The judge's gavel tapped lightly. That will be all for now. Maddox walked back to his seat. But the shift had already happened. The people watching, soldiers, officers, civilians, they had seen behind the curtain. Naomi's legal team rested their case that afternoon. By the following morning, closing arguments were underway. Brenner tried to frame Maddox as cautious, overwhelmed, doing his job. Alyssa kept it simple. This is not about one man's ego. This is about a culture, a pattern, one where power is used not to serve, but to intimidate. Captain Sinclair didn't raise her voice. She didn't fight. She didn't break. But what she did, document, report, follow through, took more strength than most people ever show. This isn't just about her. This is about every driver who didn't get to tell their story because they weren't believed. The jury was dismissed. Deliberation began. Naomi didn't wait outside the courtroom. She returned to base. She had reports to read, briefings to attend. She didn't need to linger in limbo. The verdict would come when it came. 3 days later, it did. 3 days later, the courthouse was quiet. No cameras, no reporters, just hushed voices and the soft scuffle of shoes against marble floors. Naomi Sinclair stepped inside alone. No escort, no lawyer at her side this time. Just presence. She didn't come for drama. She came for the truth. In courtroom 4B, the jury filed in. Faces unreadable. Judge Helms looked over the rim of his glasses, then nodded to the bailiff. In the matter of Captain Naomi Sinclair versus Officer Dean Maddox, the foreperson began. We find in favor of the plaintiff. Maddox exhaled hard. The room stayed still. The court recognizes a violation of the plaintiff's constitutional rights, including unlawful detainment, misuse of authority, and failure to follow department protocol during a routine traffic stop. Naomi didn't react outwardly. No smile, no shift in posture, just stillness. The judge continued. While no criminal charges will be filed at this time, the court awards damages in the amount of $35,000. This ruling is to be recorded permanently and referred to the Department of Justice for further review. Dean Maddox stared straight ahead. He didn't flinch, but something in his expression cracked. The arrogance that carried him all these years now sat heavy on his shoulders. The judge's gavel dropped softly. This court is adjourned. No one clapped. No one moved. Naomi stood, adjusted her uniform, and walked out. Outside, the sun hit the pavement hard. Naomi paused for a breath just beyond the courthouse doors. A few bystanders recognized her. Some nodded quietly, respectfully, but no one approached. She pulled out her phone and saw the notification. Case closed. Alyssa Tran's text came a moment later. You did it. Let me know if you want to talk press. They're already calling. Naomi replied with a single line. No press. No headlines. Just forward the transcript to the base. Later that evening, Officer Maddox sat alone in the back of his precinct's locker room. The buzz around the building was subdued but tense. He could feel it, the sideways looks, the muffled conversations. His captain had called him into the office just after the ruling. You'll be on administrative leave pending internal review. The captain had said, it's not about politics, Dean. It's about accountability. Maddox had tried to argue it, but the words didn't land the way they used to. He wasn't the immovable force anymore. He was the example. The shield that had once protected him was now transparent. Everyone could see through it. At Fort Wayne, Naomi returned to work the next morning like any other day. She held her usual meetings, reviewed convoy schedules, and checked in with junior officers. Nothing about her demeanor changed, but the atmosphere around her had. People spoke a little straighter, asked sharper questions, not out of fear, but out of respect. Not just for her rank, but for the principle she'd stood for. Later that afternoon, she gathered a group of new recruits in the training room. They were barely 2 weeks into basic orientation. Wide-eyed, full of energy, looking at her the way you look at someone you want to become. Naomi paced slowly across the front of the room. When I was younger, I believed the uniform would protect me. She said that if I followed protocol, respected authority, and upheld the law, others would do the same. She stopped, let the quiet sit for a moment. But respect doesn't come from your title. And power without accountability? That's just fear wearing a badge. The recruits watched her closely now, every one of them listening. A few months ago, I was pulled over on a quiet road by someone who forgot what that badge meant. I could have yelled, I could have made a scene, but I didn't. She raised her hand, calm and steady. I recorded it, I reported it, I stood my ground, not for revenge, but because the next person might not get the chance. She looked each of them in the eyes. You won't always wear this uniform, but you'll always carry the choice to act with integrity. Don't throw that away to look tough. Stand tall to do what's right. She gave a single nod and walked off the platform. Weeks passed. Dean Maddox was officially removed from patrol duties. A new policy was introduced in the Toledo Police Department requiring additional training in traffic stop de-escalation and officer accountability procedures. Internal Affairs completed their report, recommending Maddox for reassignment out of field work indefinitely. The department didn't hold a press conference. They didn't need to. The story had already spread, quietly, firmly, through legal circles, military channels, and community networks. It didn't need a headline. It had become a reference point. And Naomi? She never gave an interview. She declined every podcast, every journalist's request. Because for her, the win wasn't in going viral. It was in the ripple, the message that even without a raised voice, without a fight, you could still stand your ground. She carried on with her duties, trained the next class, continued her missions, and when a new officer in training asked her about the case in a private moment, she simply said, it wasn't about revenge, it was about the reminder that the badge is a responsibility, not a crown. Closing note. In a world where silence often protects the powerful, let Naomi Sinclair's story be a reminder that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it records, files, follows through, because accountability isn't a threat, it's a promise. And justice isn't loud, it's consistent. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Tellinight. At Tellinight, stories remind us that healing begins with hope, and even the gentlest kindness can rewrite a destiny. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss a story that could brighten your day or transform your perspective. Until our next story, keep your heart open and your spirit brave.